This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. There's been a lot of buzz lately from Tom Bower and others digging into Meghan's past. One commentator recently shared that a source close to Harry claims he knew very little about her background and is still surprised by things on a regular basis. Even Bower himself has described her story as somewhat of a mystery. So the obvious question is, why is that? Bower interviewed both Samantha Markle and her father, Thomas Markle, in his last book, yet we have no idea what was actually asked. What is clear from his writing, though, is that the stories coming from the Markle family were riddled with inconsistencies. Meghan has clearly lied about many things, but let's be honest, pretty much every character in this saga has been caught in their own falsehoods. What I don't understand is why no one with real access to so-called sources is pushing back or asking the most basic common sense questions. Have you noticed how Meghan sticks to the same handful of prepackaged stories, repeating them almost word for word? In those early interviews, back when hardly anyone knew who she was, she came across as a completely different person. Prior to 2011, she was singing a very different tune altogether. Let me show you what I mean by going back to the beginning. The very first bio that is known, documented out there, was Meghan's bio for Deal or No Deal. This is something she absolutely approved of, if not written herself. So it says here, Meghan was born and raised in Los Angeles. In high school, she was not a pageant girl, but she was homecoming queen, and that has to count for something. The first in her family to graduate college, Meghan is an alumna of Northwestern University, where she graduated with a double major in theater and international relations. After college, she worked for the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires in the Public Affairs Department and would eventually love to go back to school for her master's in international diplomacy. Her acting career began a couple of years ago. At a party, a manager asked a mutual friend if Meghan was a trained actress. Without Meghan knowing, her friend gave him a copy of a film Meghan did in college. The manager called Meghan and said, "You're going to make money, and I want to take 10%. So began her acting career. Besides being a talented actress, Meghan is also a fantastic cook, Scrabble fanatic, and something of a nerd. Today, she continues to work as an actress and is excited about many upcoming projects." So here's where it all falls down, okay? It says here, after college, Meghan went to go work for the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires, okay? Just last year, I believe, Samantha Markle was on Dan Wooten and came out and said, Meghan was on a work-study program and that anybody could have gone to it and that her father paid for her to go study abroad, meaning she hadn't graduated yet. But then in Samantha's book, the one that nobody can get a copy of now, I wonder why, it says that she got a job at the U.S. Embassy through their Uncle Mike Markle, who was allegedly CIA, according to some royal biographers, but the alleged Uncle Mike worked for the State Department. And it's on record, in 1992, he was in Bucharest, and then in 1994, he was in Ottawa, as seen in these declassified documents. I went ahead and scoured the Department of State, and there's no mention of Meghan Markle doing any kind of work at the U.S. Embassy in Argentina. So somebody's lying. Either it's Meghan, the Markles, or both. My suspicion, it's both. Meghan never went to work for the embassy in Argentina, but it is possible that she was in Argentina, and I'll show you why. If Meghan went to Argentina allegedly in 2003, which would be after when she graduated, then it would explain the gap in the list of credits. As you can see here, between 2002 and 2004, there were no acting gigs. So my assumption is that if she were to be yachting or going off and training for some covert mission, then that would be the year to do it. Now, I do believe something went down in Argentina, but it's not what we've been told. There's like 5 different variations of this story. I mean, you have Thomas Markle saying that Meghan went her sophomore year, and then Samantha in her book saying she went her junior year. And then last year, Samantha saying she went to Argentina on a work-study program that anybody could have gone to, which her dad paid for. And then you have Meghan saying that she went to Argentina, worked for the U.S. Embassy after she graduated college. And we have no evidence that she ever graduated Northwestern, even though there is a commencement book that has her name in it. There is no real official certificate that we have seen to validate and verify that. Now remember, in my last video or a couple videos ago, I had talked about Rahm Emanuel, who went to Northwestern, who also was mayor of Chicago, and how we have so many coincidences with the Obamas. Would it have been easy for Rahm to have the CIA slip Meghan's name into a commencement book? Possibly. They do this stuff all the time. All of the graduation photos that we've seen with Meghan and her alleged dad are fraudulent. That's not the cap and gown for Northwestern. Everybody knows cap and gown for Northwestern is purple. What Meghan's wearing is not purple. So what photo is this? And we know the photos with Lindsay Roth on graduation day is also fraudulent. Like, why is Lindsay Roth not graduating with Meghan? I thought they went to school together. But let's go a little further here and talk about this interview that Meghan did in her own words with Chicago Tribune on February 12, 2013. Go away with Meghan Markle. Actress Meghan Markle was born and raised in Los Angeles and films her series Suits, which airs on the USA Network in Toronto, Canada. Her mother was a travel agent, which meant that Markle got to travel quite a lot as a child, and she grew to love it. I got the travel bug quite early, says Markle, who portrays Rachel Zane on the series. My earliest memories are going to Mexico twice a year and Hawaii quite a few times. We never did conventional family trips like Disney World. Hawaii and Mexico were closer for us than going to Florida or the Caribbean. Fans may follow Markle on Twitter at Meghan Markle. As a child, did you ever wish you could go on more conventional trips like your friends? Meghan says, this is all I knew. Just like being an only child was all I knew. I was always aware of how unique and cool it was that my mom got to take me to all these cool places because of her job and connections. It was so much fun traveling, primarily with my mom. I never felt envious of the more cookie-cutter type of vacations, although I'm sure those would have been wonderful too. But my mom never wanted me to just go to a resort and not leave the property, and think that was all there was to visiting a foreign country. We liked going to Oaxaca, Mexico, and tried to really get an authentic cultural experience. What has traveling taught you? Meghan says, it really shapes you from a young age and makes you really empathetic of people of whatever culture, wherever they're from. It made me much more courageous to take myself out of a sheltered bubble. I moved to Argentina at 21 and worked for the U.S. Embassy. And then I went to Madrid. My dad's a lighting director. Growing up in Hollywood, I was around the entertainment industry all the time. I knew I'd end up in show business in some capacity eventually, but when I was young, I knew I wanted to try something else, so it was wonderful to be in the foreign services and live in Buenos Aires. I think that kind of life experience can only help in your performance as an actor. So here we have again Meghan doubling down on working for the U.S. Embassy in Argentina. But we also have the first instance of Meghan saying that she was an only child. Like I've said, whenever Meghan is telling her lies, there's always a small element of truth in these stories that she's telling. So let's think about this. Recently, remember when Carol Malone had to apologize on GB News that Doria wasn't in prison and that it was Doria that raised Meghan? Out of all the times for the Markles to use the media, because we know that they like to use the media and have them on speed dial, why didn't they speak up? Why didn't they push back and say that that's not true? Why didn't Thomas Markle push back and say, no, it was me who raised Meghan? That was the one time that they chose to be silent. Why? Then we have this nonsense of Meghan's mom being a travel agent. You notice in this article, they don't say Doria. So humor me for a second. I mean, think outside the box. Possibilities. With all the lies that we have been told and all the inconsistencies with these stories, who's to say that these people that we're calling Meghan Markle's parents really are her parents? Could it possibly be that Meghan did have a mother who was a travel agent and she was traveling all over the world? That's why no one can come forward with any kind of stories as to who this woman is? It doesn't help that the people who are supposed to be her family have been inconsistent with their stories, and nobody seems to push back and ask why. Right? Samantha's book is filled with all of these inconsistencies. Now the story is, oh no, Meghan went to Argentina because it was a work-study program. Like, how are we to believe any of that when they were pumping out articles in the beginning about Uncle Mike? And Uncle Mike, poor Uncle Mike, didn't get invited to the wedding, and look what he did for Meghan. He pulled all those strings to get Meghan into the U.S. Embassy. Now there's no discussion or talk about Meghan working at the U.S. Embassy anymore. You notice, and with Love Meghan, Meghan doesn't mention it again. Is it because Trump is in office now? I think so. I am certain they wouldn't want someone like me opening up a FOIA asking to know about this so-called time at the U.S. Embassy in Argentina. And it's such a small world that back in 2013, this one game that was not so special, just so happened we have Rahm Emanuel and Meghan Markle both tweeting about this game. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. But it is a small world considering that Rahm Emanuel was chief of staff for Obama, and then Meghan's billionaire friend, Ken Griffith, was the biggest donor to his campaign for running for mayor of Chicago. And this was a time when Meghan recently divorced Trevor and was hanging out a lot with Marcus Anderson. And thus, I believe this whole new narrative was being built for Meghan to then be planted into the royal family. And we started to see these really dramatic shifts in all of Meghan's biographies, going from actress, model, to now all of a sudden humanitarian. And we started to see more and more Meghan really talking about being half Black or African American and her father being Dutch and Irish. This woman that we're calling Meghan Markle didn't get to the royal family on her own. She had help, for sure. And we are being jerked around in every sense concerning this couple. Did you all see the news about the palace now hiring Sky News UK Rhiannon Mills to be the new communications secretary to the king? Now, why am I pointing this out? Well, many people don't realize that she was the one who kicked off one of the first disinformation campaigns for Harry and Meghan. In March of 2019, the palace redesigned their social media policy and guidelines because of Meghan and how trolled she was. A month later, we had Rhiannon Mills do this special report on all the racist trolls in Megxit, meaning us, who had been attacking. In other words, they didn't like that we were questioning the validity of the line of succession and Meghan's pregnancy. Around the same time, one of the largest media outlets here in the United States launched the Sussex Squad. Now, at the time, no one realized that what was going on was a targeted disinformation campaign to craft this whole narrative around why we need to stop mis and disinformation, thus launching this information warfare onto unsuspecting innocent people, causing a lot of psychological and financial harm. This technically was the springboard for Meghan to craft the excuse on why they need to flee the United Kingdom and rush back to the United States in 2020 to help the Biden regime and meddle with our elections, under this bullshit guise of wanting financial independence and finding freedom. Now, if you've been through this journey with me, you all see how things dramatically shifted once Elon Musk bought over Twitter and Trump got back into office. I told everybody how exactly this was all going to play out if Trump got back into office, that Harry was going to want to make it back to the UK, and look at what we're witnessing now. The Trump administration knows all about this. and much more. Now, do I think we'll ever know the real story about who this woman Meghan Markle is? No, I don't. And the reason why is because if indeed she is an intelligence asset, which I am pretty certain she is at this point, they're not going to disclose their methods on how they source people or where they come from or what kind of training they had or how this bitch managed to make her way into the royal family. We're just not going to know who were the ones that opened the doors for her. Now, the big question is Meghan Markle blackmailing the royal family? Yeah, I believe so. Now, I don't think sleazy is a big part of this. I could be wrong, but I think it has more to do with all the stuff that they have been involved with here with the Biden regime and our U.S. military, and I'll leave it at that. Feel free to draw your own conclusions from there, but I'll tell you this much. This whole desperation for security is not so much that he is desperate to have this armed police protection. That IPP status is very important, but I don't think it will really matter though. But then again, these are just all my opinions. What do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.